8 months ago, Amara opened a spreadsheet and discovered she had been donating 2 full workdays every single week to a job that did not technically need them.
She was not burned out. She was not chasing fire. She was not dissatisfied with her career.
She sat down with her finances for one specific reason. A single question her sister asked at dinner that stopped the conversation cold.
What is the precise dollar figure that is actually tethering you to a 5-day schedule? Amara assumed the answer would be obvious.
She had been doing this long enough to feel certain she understood her own numbers. She was wrong. Amara is 36 years old.
She earns $64,000 annually. She is neither in financial distress nor financially free. She occupies the exact income band that the standard full-time employment model was architected for.
Reliable enough to stay committed, occupied enough to avoid asking harder questions.
What she uncovered after finally doing the arithmetic is that she has been surrendering 2 workdays per week, week after week, not out of genuine financial necessity, but because no one ever handed her the equation. That equation is what this entire video is about, not a motivational pitch about working less.
Not a vague lifestyle upgrade fantasy. The actual, concrete, number-based question. What specific dollar amount is locking you into a 5-day week?
Because the moment you identify that figure, you are forced to confront a decision you have been postponing, possibly for years.
And the uncomfortable truth most people discover is that the number is dramatically smaller than their instincts told them.
I am your host on Novira Invests. This channel exists to interrogate the financial defaults most people inherit rather than choose.
This particular default may be the one costing you the most, and it does not appear anywhere on your bank statement.
If you're watching for the first time, hit subscribe. What follows is going to challenge some assumptions before it starts making sense.
Let us begin with the standard picture because it holds up reasonably well on the surface. You earn $64,000 a year. After federal income withholding, FICA contributions, and a typical state tax rate, your net annual take home settles at roughly $46,500, translating to approximately $3,875 each month.
Housing runs $1,250. Food, utilities, transportation, and insurance together total around $1,450. That combination reaches $2,700 per month. The category most households label non-negotiable,
Which leaves you $175 monthly as discretionary margin. That gap is what the 5-day arrangement is supposed to justify.
And for a significant portion of working adults, this arithmetic is familiar enough to feel settled.
They agreed to the deal. 40 hours per week, $3,800. 175 deposited on schedule, $2,700. 100 already allocated before Monday begins, $1,100. 175 remaining as evidence the trade was fair.
Manageable, predictable, unremarkable, and that is precisely where most financial content leaves it. Open a high-yield savings account, automate your retirement contributions, cancel whatever subscription you have not touched in 3 months.
The underlying premise of every single one of those recommendations is identical. The 40-hour week is a permanent fixture, and your only leverage is in how you spend what remains after it claimed.
That premise is not incorrect. It is simply incomplete, because it categorizes your work schedule as a condition of employment when it is also quietly a line item in your budget.
One that has never appeared on any template you have ever used.
Bureau of Labor Statistics data on consumer expenditure, reviewed annually, consistently reveals a meaningful cluster of spending categories that are not tied to your standard of living.
They are tied to your schedule.
Full-time office workers, when isolated as a cohort, carry between $400 and $650 per month in expenses that exist solely because of where they are required to be, and for how many hours, and on how
many days. This is not an estimate based on lifestyle choices. It is a structural cost, and it scales invisibly alongside the career that generates it.
Break it into components, transportation to a fixed office,
In most mid-sized metropolitan areas, a monthly parking arrangement or transit pass costs between $85 and $160.
Amara pays $115. She has renewed it automatically for 7 years without examining whether it is a true necessity or a fee imposed by her schedule. Professional attire maintenance, dry cleaning, seasonal replacements, garments purchased for specific presentations.
Amara averages $65 per month here. Money she would not spend at the same rate working from home or working fewer days.
Midday meals. Amara buys lunch 4 days out of 5 because her break is 40 minutes and leaving the building to cook is not an option the calendar affords.
Average expenditure per meal is $17. Monthly total, approximately $272. If she were home, that figure collapses to under $50.
The gap between those two numbers is $222 every single month, generated entirely by her location between noon and 1 p.m.
Then there is the fitness membership she signed up for with sincere intentions, $48 per month.
She has attended twice in the past 5 months, not because she lacks discipline, but because the version of herself that exists at 6:30 p.m. after a full office day does not have the energy that
Version of herself imagined at 9 a.m. on a Sunday when she signed the contract. The membership is not a wellness investment at this utilization rate.
It is a recurring charge for the aspirational person she plans to become once she is less exhausted.
combine the line items $115 in commuting costs, $65 in professional wardrobe upkeep, $222 in the lunch differential.
$48 in the underused membership, that total is $450.
Add a conservative $50 buffer for the smaller friction costs you did not catalog. The extra coffee purchased on difficult mornings, the rideshare taken when the day ran long, the convenience food
ordered because the evening had no space for cooking. You arrive at $500 per month, $600 per year.
That is the operating cost of the schedule itself, and it has never appeared as its own category in any budget Amara has ever built, because she never thought to look for it as a category.
Remove it from her monthly baseline, her real cost of sustaining her life drops from $2,700 to $2,200.
Annualized $26,400, not $46,500, $26,400. That is what Amara's life actually costs once you subtract what she spends specifically to maintain the arrangement generating the income.
Now comes the first objection, and it is a reasonable one: health care. When employment hours fall below a threshold, employer-sponsored coverage typically ends.
Amara ran this scenario, an individual marketplace plan for a 36-year-old at her income level, depending on geography and tier selection, runs between $210 and $320 monthly. She used $260 as her planning figure. Her adjusted monthly floor becomes $460. Here is what a reduced schedule looks like numerically.
3 working days per week represent 60% of her current hours. 60% of $64,000 gross is $38,400.
After taxes, her annual take. Home on that figure is approximately $29,600, or roughly $465 per month.
Her floor, inclusive of the independent health plan, sits at $460. The math clears by $5, not thousands, not hundreds, $5. What is closing a gap of $5 per month worth in terms of scheduling autonomy? One online lesson taught, one document edited for a former colleague, one afternoon of consulting work invoiced at any professional rate.
The barrier between Amara and a permanent 3-day week, measured in dollars, is equivalent to a single transaction.
As the saying goes, the number you need is not your salary, it is your stripped floor, and they are not the same.
This is the moment where most viewers raise the identical set of objections, and they are legitimate ones that deserve direct engagement.
What about building savings? What about funding retirement? What about unexpected expenses? A 3-day income at this level does not generate significant surplus for compounding.
That is accurate, and Amara understands it. But the objections all share a hidden assumption that a salaried 5-day arrangement is the only instrument available for financial accumulation.
It is not. A single consulting client producing $500 monthly adds $600 annually from 1 day per week that Amara controls entirely rather than allocates by default.
Her stripped budget at 3 days carries a $200 annual surplus.
Layer the consulting income on top, and she is directing $800 per year, rather than watching it arrive and depart on someone else's timeline.
The point is not that a 3-day structure is costless or simple. The point is that the income threshold required to sustain your actual life is meaningfully lower than your current salary, which means the hour requirement to reach that threshold is meaningfully lower than 40. The hours in between are not leisure.
They are leverage to build whatever income layer resolves the remaining objection. $64,000 is Amara's number, not yours.
But the underlying logic travels across income levels, and it travels in a specific direction. Higher salaries tend to come bundled with more expensive professional environments.
More prestigious addresses, more demanding attire standards, longer commutes to offices that match the title on the business card.
The phantom layer embedded in a $90,000 salary is typically thicker than the one embedded in a $64,000 salary, not thinner.
Which means that as income rises, the gap between what you earn and what you genuinely need, after removing schedule, dependent costs, tends to expand rather than contract.
The person earning $85,000 is statistically not further from a restructured schedule than Amara.
In most professional categories, they are closer because the invisible overhead attached to their earnings is proportionally larger and more deeply buried. The framework is constant. What changes are the variables you supply. So why does virtually no one do this calculation?
That question requires leaving the domain of personal finance for a moment. Behavioral economists across several decades of research, including work associated with Airlie, Kahneman, and Thaler, have identified a consistent cognitive pattern they call anchoring.
When a number becomes your established reference point, your brain begins treating it as the minimum viable condition, not as one day, the point among several.
Your annual salary stops functioning as a measure of what you earn. It becomes a measure of who you are financially, of what survival requires.
Even when your actual expenditures, stripped of schedule, dependent costs, require nothing close to that figure, the anchor holds.
And each raise does not loosen its grip. It relocates it upward. The floor rises annually.
Spending follows, shaped by lifestyle expansion and the phantom costs that accumulate inside a compressed schedule.
The real gap between income and genuine need quietly closes, not because your life became more expensive, but because no one separated the budget into what you need versus what you need because of.
How you work underneath the financial anchor sits a second, less visible force. The 5-day structure is not just an economic arrangement.
It functions as a credential. It signals engagement. It communicates participation in a shared social architecture that the people around you have also agreed to occupy.
When Amara mentioned to a friend that she was running numbers on a reduced schedule, the immediate response was not practical curiosity.
It was a concerned look and a quiet question. Is everything all right at work? That response is data.
The embedded assumption is that choosing to work less is a symptom of difficulty rather than a conclusion reached through deliberate analysis.
That assumption is so thoroughly embedded in professional culture that most people absorb it as financial reality rather than identifying it accurately as a social preference for conformity over.
Reclaim time. Remember this. You were never shown the math. That is not a personal failure. It is a missing lesson. The salary anchor and the identity anchor operate in the same direction simultaneously. Your internal model says you cannot afford fewer days.
Your social environment says you should not want fewer days. Between them, the calculation never runs.
Not because the arithmetic fails, because the question was never permitted to form clearly enough to be asked.
Amira did not have a discipline problem or an income problem. She had an incomplete equation. She had never performed the subtraction.
If she had worked through this framework at 31 and restructured her week immediately with a single supplemental income source, she would have recaptured roughly 200 hours between then and now.
2 recovered days weekly, 7 hours of usable capacity each, over 4.5 years.
At a conservative $10 per hour of economic return from that time, 1 piece of freelance work, 1 client managed independently, 1 skill offered on her own terms that represents $32,000 in value.
Generated during hours other workers were queuing in parking structures on Wednesday mornings. That figure excludes compound growth.
It excludes the capabilities developed. It excludes the rest recovered. It is the conservative floor of what was available.
Extend the rate to $25 per hour, the going market rate for a single part-time professional arrangement in most knowledge, work fields, and 200 hours returns $80,000.
That exceeds Amara's gross annual salary, generated from time she was surrendering to a default she had never formally examined.
The real cost of the 5-day structure is not only found in the money spent on schedule-dependent expenses.
It is also measured in time that cannot be recovered, alternatives that were never priced, and an equation that was never placed in front of you clearly enough to solve.
You have a number. It is the dollar amount required to cover your stripped monthly expenses. Subtract the phantom costs.
Subtract the spending that exists because of your schedule rather than because of your life. What remains is your actual floor.
If your present income clears that floor, and for the majority of salaried professionals above 30 it does, then the extra days you are working are covering a gap that was constructed, insignificant part by 2 anchors you never consciously adopted. The question worth asking is not whether you can afford to restructure your schedule. The question is whether you have run the numbers clearly enough to know Amara had not. If you are watching this, there is a reasonable probability you have not either.
That is not an indictment of your financial intelligence. It is a gap in the standard financial curriculum everyone received. If this framework opens something for you, the practical next step is running the same audit on your own figures.
We have built a free worksheet in the description that separates schedule-dependent spending from true living costs so you can identify your own floor.
If you want to rebuild the full structure around what your life actually requires rather than what your employer's deposit schedule has trained you to expect, the link to our full course framework
is there as well. If Novira Invests has given you a new way to see your financial situation today, the single most useful thing you can do right now is hit the like button.
It tells the algorithm this conversation matters and helps us reach the person who needs this equation most and has never seen it before.
The 5-day week is not a law of economics. It is an inherited default. Defaults persist not because they represent the optimal outcome, but because the alternative calculation was never presented.
Amara ran the calculation. Now you have 2.